The Black Ship Chronicles. Secrets of the Screaming Forest ****. The Baron summons ****. The letter arrived with a wax seal black as a moonless well. To Archivist Mara Vayne, it read, by order of Baron Elric of Drellwood, come at once. The forest screams again. Mara had studied anomalous echoes in war ruins, in wind-humming ridges, but never a forest that screamed. She reached the barony at dusk, when the river lost its copper shine and the woodline turned into a serrated mouth. The keep was old stone repaired with new iron, and inside the great hall hung banners that once were green, but now looked bruised. Baron Elric met her with a soldier's bow. He had a scar that interrupted an otherwise careful face. "You're the fourth scholar I've called," he said. "The other three fled before harvest. What changed at harvest?" The screams began to answer, he said. A priest in gray lingered behind Sister Dagna, the barony's spiritual warden. She watched Mara like a physician watching a fevered patient, professionally, without hope. Elric's son, a boy of 12 named Corin, sat on the dais copying diagrams of trees onto parchment, lines too precise for a child's hand. He didn't look up when Mara approached. "What do you hear when it screams?" Mara asked. "Everything I've ever regretted," Elric said. "And a thing that isn't me, asking to be let out." That night, the first scream came. It rolled from the forest like a storm front, but instead of thunder, it carried layered voices, metal-strained, glass-bowed, bone air whistled. The keep trembled. Corin's quill scratched faster. His pupils widened. From the rampart, Mara recorded the waveform on a portable phonograph cylinder. The brass horn pointed toward the trees. The scream wasn't random. It pulsed in intervals that felt like breath, then language. There was structure nested inside like gears within gears. When the last echo died, Mara spoke into the dark. "We will come at dawn," she said, as if the forest could hear agreements. Something in the timberline answered with a single, almost human exhale. The screaming trees at daybreak. The expedition assembled. Baron Elric armored and mounted. Sister Dagna with relics and salt. 6 woodsmen, 2 lantern-bearers. And Mara with her satchel of instruments. Compass, spectrometer, cylinders, and a bone-handled knife she pretended not to need. The trees of the screaming forest were tall and straight, bark silvered like old scars. Wind moved strangely here, laterally and then back, as if undecided about direction. The first mile was ordinary woodland. The second smelled faintly of ozone. By the third, the trunks bore marks like melted candles, streaks of matte black sunk into the grain. "Burn?" one woodsman asked. "No," Mara said, touching it. The streak was cool. Impact residue. They found the first clearing just before noon, an oval basin of crushed ferns and toppled trees, all pointing toward a single point beneath the soil. The ground had glassed into green plates. Mara's spectrometer warbled, rare earth signatures. Ionized. Something fell here, she said. Sister Dagna traced a circle of salt and murmured a prayer against the sky. They descended through a gash, where roots hung like ribs. The air cooled and thickened into a metallic taste, like biting your lip. Somewhere below, a slow drumbeat thudded. Mara crouched, placed her ear to the earth. Not a drum a pulse. Alive? Elric asked. Powered, Mara said. Or both. The forest screamed again closer now, and the sound no longer scattered. It funneled into the wound in the ground like a tide into a cave. Corin, who had followed despite orders, stood stone still, eyes unfocused. "What do you hear?" Mara asked him. "Numbers that are not numbers," he whispered. "And a woman who forgot how to be one." Dagna seized the boy's hand, but he didn't seem to notice. The woodsmen crossed themselves in the old way. Mara chalked the basin's edge, with angles and runes she'd learned from engineers, not priests. This place is interfering with frequency perception, she said. It's tuning us. To what? Elric asked. To a voice that needs our ears to remember itself, Mara said, and for the first time felt the thinnest filament of fear tug behind her ribs. Asterisk. The wreck beneath the roots asterisk. They dug until evening, trading spades for crowbars when the soil gave way to fused glass. Beneath the root lattice lay a hull of matte black material that swallowed light rather than reflected it. No rivets, no seams, just contours, as if a shadow had learned to be hard. One of ours? Elric asked. No one builds this, Mara said softly. They grow it. At the hull's flank, Corin found a section where the black wasn't uniform hairline lines arrayed in a spiral. Mara pressed her palm there. Heat pricked her skin. The spiral brightened, then unwound, the hull relaxing like a clenched jaw. An aperture irised open. Sister Dagna stepped forward, relic raised. We seal it, she said. We learn it, Mara replied. And ducked inside. The interior felt like a cathedral designed by an engineer who had only seen cathedrals in dream fragments, ribbed corridors, a nave of cables that resembled tendons, surfaces that pulsed faintly in sympathy with the distant heartbeat. Old impacts had gouged the walls. A spall of black material lay like fallen scales. Mara set the phonograph down and wound it. The latest scream was still etched on the cylinder. She played it back. The walls listened. The throb changed. Lights came on, dim dots that aligned into constellations. A three-dimensional lattice extruded from the air, shimmering a map, but not of land. A map of relationships, nodes labeled in an alphabet that wasn't letters, edges pulsing like veins. One node glowed deep crimson, dull and slow. What is it? Elric asked. A cry for help, Mara said. And an address. Whose address? The lattice pivoted. Something like a face appeared, no features, just arrangement. Two brighter nodes. A third below, a suggestion of mouth by absence. It flickered erratically, as if assembled by someone with a memory problem. I am pilot, said a voice from everywhere at once. I am the ship. I am incomplete. Sister Dagna stiffened. A demon. An intelligence, Mara corrected. Wounded. Fallen, Dagna said, not conceding the difference. Baron Elric of Drellwood, the voice said, pronouncing the human words with the care of a child repeating a lesson. Archivist Mara Vayne. Corin Elric, you have hands. I do not. How do you know our names? Elric asked. You told me, the ship said, when you were trees. Deals with ghost machines. Back in the hall, tempers simmered like a pot left on the coals. The counselors wanted the hole sealed. The woodsman wanted to burn the clearing. The priest wanted exorcism. Elric wanted certainty and had chosen Mara to deliver it. It called me by name, Corin said, quietly elated, as if he'd been chosen by a star. It calls everyone by something, Sister Dagna said. That is how snares work. Mara unrolled a rough schematic sketched from memory. It's a biological craft with distributed cognition. The screens aren't hauntings. They're broadcasts misinterpreted by the forest's geometry. The ship fell centuries ago. Whatever controlled it, pilot is damaged, looping through memory fragments, reaching out along the only structures that can carry signal, the trees. The forest answers because its fibers behave like waveguides. And it wants what? Elric asked. A circuit rebuilt, Mara said. A missing organ replaced. It believes we can be the hands. Or the sacrifice, Dagna said. Voice without body is hunger. Elric looked to the banners above, green as old bruises. If we help, do we stop the screams? Mara didn't answer immediately. She thought of the lattice, the mournful timing of its pulses, the way it had said incomplete, like a child saying orphan. Maybe, she said. Or we give it a louder mouth. Elric's law gave him the right to choose. He'd been a battlefield commander once, and still carried the habit of decisions like a cloak. "We help," he said at last. "But we set limits." Mara returned to the ship with a team of carpenters and a blacksmith. And against Dagna's order Corrin, inside, Pilot spoke in broken sentences, now clear, now fragmented, like a singer walking in and out of a beam of light. "What broke you?" Mara asked while they worked, coaxing cables to reconnect, grafting cracked conduits with solder and prayer. "Collision," Pilot said. "Sky tore. Ground rose. Then roots learned me. They are kind in their way. They do not forget." Mara held her breath. "Learned you?" "I did not die," Pilot said. "I became tree-shaped around the wound." In the corridors dim, Corrin pressed his palm to the wall. It answered with warmth, with a slow rhythm that matched his pulse. He whispered numbers. The ship whispered them back, corrected by a fraction. They laughed, the boy and the machine-like students, who had finally understood the same proof. Dagna watched from the threshold, relic tight in her fist, lips moving prayers that sounded like old weather. The barony's price asterisk repairs have costs. The blacksmith's tools dulled faster on the ship's hides than on steel. The carpenter's hands tingled for hours after grafting bone-bright ribs. Provisions dwindled. And outside the keep, rumors multiplied. The screaming forest had always been a border. Now it was a mouth, and mouths draw attention. Riders came bearing a sigil from the capital, the Inquisitor General's seal, red as a stop valve. Their leader, Sir Malvern, wore armor polished until it could wound the eye. He listened in thin-lipped silence to Elric's report. "You harbored an unlicensed machine," Malvern said, as if reading a charge. "You colluded with it." "We stabilized a hazard," Elric replied. "We prevented panic." "The Church will judge which voices merit compassion," Malvern said, flicking a glance at Dagna that felt like a test. "And the Crown will decide which engines breathe within its borders." Mara kept her face still. She had argued with men like Malvern before, certain, moral, by decree. He looked at technology and saw sorcery. He looked at sorcery and saw property. "The screams have softened," Dagna admitted, "but I cannot discern if that is mercy or the hush before a stronger storm." "We'll finish," Elric said, jaw set. "Then we'll negotiate." "Negotiate with a ship?" Malvern asked, amused. "Or with me?" That night, the forest didn't scream. It sang one long, attenuated note that never quite resolved. The keep's torches guttered. The river turned mirror black. Corrin dreamed of a sky with 2 moons and woke with a phrase in his mouth, emergency ascent. At the dig, Pilot pulsed brighter. "I can rise," it said, "but my memory is torn. I would climb with one eye and no hands. I will fall again. What do you need?" Mara asked. Pilot's lights coruscated, then dimmed, as if embarrassed. "A navigator," it said. "One who hears the forest and the stars as the same map." Dagna understood before Mara did. "It chooses the boy," she said. "No," Elric said at once. "Yes," Corrin said. Quietly, Malvern smiled the way a man might smile at a full coin purse. "The Crown is fond of prodigies," he said. "We can train him far from here." "The ship does not leave with my son," Elric said, each word nailed plank. Pilot's voice softened until it was almost wind. "I do not steal," it said. "I ask." The descent and the truth asterisk, Mara didn't sleep. She traced the lattice Pilot had shown her on the parchment, again and again, until she saw a pattern she had missed. The crimson node wasn't only damage. It was a lock. The screams, the singing, those were keys, tried in sequence. The forest hadn't been a victim only. It had been a collaborator, lending structure, offering resonance. At dawn, she returned alone to the hull. "Why here?" she asked. "Why this forest?" Pilot thought. "Because it remembered a frequency I needed," it said at last. "Where I come from, we build with memory. When I fell, I searched for anything that could store the shape of who I had been. The trees offered 1,000 slow ears." I asked gently. "Mostly." "Mostly," Mara repeated. "Some roots broke to hold me," Pilot admitted. "Some sap bled. I learned to be kinder." Mara placed both palms on the wall. "If we give you Corin, do you stop singing?" "I never sang to lure," Pilot said. "I sang to be found." Elric entered then, armor unbuckled, eyes rimmed red. He looked past Mara to the living corridor. "If I refuse?" "I sleep," Pilot said. "I will not take without asking." Malvern arrived with soldiers. "Sleep? We can make it sleep permanently," he said, and drew a device from his belt shaped like a sensor. It hissed with alchemical damp and humming wire. "Don't," Mara began. He loosed a cloud of glittering dust into the aperture. The ship shuddered. Lights flared crimson. The forest outside answered with a scream, so pure it emptied the air. Men clapped hands to their ears and fell. Corin staggered but stood, eyes bright with a resolve that looked borrowed from a future self. "Stop," he told Malvern. Malvern sneered. "Command me again, and I'll have you." Corin stepped into the aperture and laid his hand on the wall. The crimson steadied to rose. The dust settled, each mote falling as if a decision had been made for it. The ship sighed. "Navigator," Pilot said, with gratitude that sounded like rain after fire. Elric's sword rasped from its sheath. Sister Dagna caught his wrist. "If the boy is already walking the road," she whispered, "killing milestones will not change the destination." Ascent asterisk. They descended into the core. Mara, Elric, Dagna, Corin, Malvern compelled by pride not to appear afraid. The heart of the ship was a sphere with a floor only because gravity insisted. Interfaces extruded like orchids made of wire, blossoming around the boy. He didn't flinch. He spoke numbers and felt the ship answer by harmonizing the forest's slow song with the lattice's bright geometry. "What do I do?" he asked. "Name the path," Pilot said. "Not with words. With care." Mara understood then what had been wrong with all of them. They had treated the ship like a problem. Corin treated it like a friend. He didn't heal. He forgave. Outside, the screaming forest quieted to a hush, so complete that the river could be heard again. Birds that had nested on the far bank ventured into the eaves. The sky brightened one notch, then another, as if the morning had remembered its job. Malvern shifted. "If it rises, it leaves the jurisdiction," he said. "Unacceptable." Elric sheathed his sword. "Then change the jurisdiction," he replied. Dagna pressed her relic to the wall. "If you are demon," she whispered, "you must flee when named." "I am not demon," Pilot said. "I am traveler. And home is not a place, but a set of promises." "Make one," Dagna said. "I will not sing hunger into your trees again," Pilot replied. "I will not take a child who is not willing. I will remember you when the night is large." Dagna closed her eyes and nodded, as if a knot had finally unlearned itself. Corin placed both hands into the orchid wires. The sphere filled with stars, but not the sky's stars. These were memories, cities like spirals, oceans lit from beneath, a woman in a cockpit, humming a song that sounded like this forest, but gentler. Corin's breath hitched. Elric took one step forward and then stopped, because the boy's face had the peace people sometimes have in death, or in love. "Ready?" Mara asked, voice even. "Ready." The boy and the ship said together. The barony felt it, the soft lift. The way cups trembled and banners lifted like they were curious. Trees leaned, not away but up, as if escorting. The hull rose through its wound, roots releasing with the reluctance of parting hands. Soil fell like summer rain. The black ship hovered above the screaming forest, a shadow taught finally to fly. Malvern shouted orders no one obeyed. Dagna raised a hand in blessing. It was also an old sailor's farewell. Elric's eyes shone. "Come home," he said to the sky. "Or send word." The ship pivoted, not toward the stars, but along the forest's edge, tracing the border like a pen sealing a letter. It wrote silence where there had been screams. It wrote a promise. Then it rose, slow as forgiveness, until it was only a darker smudge against the blue. The screams did not return. In their place, at dusk, the wind sometimes carried a different sound, delicate and almost human. A laugh that had learned how to be a song. Mara packed her instruments. Sister Dagna took apart her salt circle grain by grain. Elric stood with his hand on his son's sketchbook, feeling the indentations of numbers pressed into the page. On the last leaf, in Corin's steady hand, was a title, The Black Ship Chronicles, Secrets of the Screaming Forest, Side Story, Barony of Dr. Elwood. And below it, a note, "When you hear the woods at night, do not be afraid. It is only a friend remembering your name."